In Lesson 3 for descriptive statistics, we're going to look at circle graphs and line graphs. Circle graphs are often called pie charts, and a circle is divided into sectors where each sector represents part of a whole. Each sector is proportional in size to the amount that each sector represents. So the larger sections of the circle or the pie represent larger percentages, and it's done proportionally. So let's take a look at an example of how to use a circle chart. So in this example, registered nurses were asked to report where they were employed. Their results are presented in the circle graph. At the time, there were 229,000 registered nurses in Canada. So question A asks, what percentage of registered nurses worked in nursing homes in 1999? So if we look for the nursing home slice of pie or sector of the circle graph, we can see our answer right there is 12%. Approximately how many registered nurses worked in hospitals in 1999? Well, the chart doesn't tell us how many. We have to do a bit of math to do that. So let's look at hospitals is 59%. So really we want 59% of the 229,000 nurses. So we'll turn our percent to a decimal and multiply by 229,000. And we get 135,110 RNs. Let's look at question C. It asks approximately 9,160 RNs were employed in what sector? And again, we can't get the answer to this question directly by reading the graph. Instead, we have to figure out what percent is 9,160 RNs. So we will do we'll divide here 9,160 out of the total number of 229,000. And when we do, and we'll multiply by 100 to turn it into a percent right away, and we'll get 4%. Once we have the percent, we can see that, that represents home care. Okay, so approximately 9,160 RNs were employed in the home care sector. Let's move on to question D. Approximately how many RNs were employed in either either home care or nursing homes? So nursing homes is 12%, home care is 4%. So we can add those together, and we know that it's 16% of the RNs in total. And then we can do our math. 16% of 229,000 will be 0.16 times 229,000. And we get 36,640 RNs. And then let's look at question E. Approximately how many more RNs were employed in hospitals than in community health agencies? So hospitals were 59%, community health agencies are 8%. So let's take a look at the difference so that we can calculate how much that is. There's two ways to do that. Since we already have the number of nurses in hospitals from question B, we could find the number of nurses in community health agencies and then subtract, or we can subtract the percentages first, which is the method that I've chosen to do. So if I take 59% and I subtract the 8% that are working in community health agencies, I get 51%. and I'll just do my multiplication. So 0.51 times 229,000, and that gives me 116,790 more RNs in hospitals than in community agencies. And the final question says, what is the ratio of RNs employed in community health agencies to nursing homes? So let's take a look at the graph first for a minute. So we're comparing community health agencies, which is 8%, to nursing homes, which is 12%. So now let's turn that into a ratio, okay? So the first one is community health agencies, and the second number is nursing homes. So I'm going to set up my ratio like this. So I have 8% to 12%, and because we always reduce to lowest terms, that gives us 2 to 3 is the ratio of RNs employed in community health agencies to nursing homes. All right, let's move on to line graphs. Line graphs are created by plotting data points and then connecting them with lines. And they are very useful for showing trends, especially over time. If you look at the graph that we have here, we can see that it's comparing fertility rate, which is the average number of children born to women between the ages of 15 and 49. And our horizontal axis gives us the years. So over time, we can see what's happened to the fertility rates. And we can see that there's a spike, and then it goes down, and then it starts going down more gradually. So let's answer these questions, and then we can see how we can use a line graph. So first question is, what's the approximate fertility rate in 1970? So let's go across to 1970 and then look up and find that dot, and you can see that it's between 2 and 2.5, and it's a scooch more than half, so let's call that 2.3. Question B says, in what year was the fertility rate approximately 3.2? So let's go up to 3.2 on the graph, so that's going to be between 3 and 3.5 and just below halfway. And if we go across, we can see that that represents that point, and that's 1965. Question C asks, how much did the fertility rate drop by between 1960 and 1970? So let's take a look at what 1960s is. It's almost at 4, so let's call that 3.9. And we already said that 1970 was 2.3, so we'll subtract those, and we've got 1.6 is how much it dropped by in that decade. And the last question is, after 1960, when did fertility rates increase? So 1960 is the peak, and then it's pretty much going down, but we can see that between 85 and 90, we have an increase. So, and it's just a slight increase though, from 1.7 to 1.8 or something in that neighborhood. So we could just write that between 1985 and 1990, there is a slight increase. Oops, don't forget the last letter. Okay, so that's the end of this lesson on circle graphs and line graphs.